If you're passionate about freedom, liberty, and the future of our country, then Political Talk Thursday is for you. With the latest in politics and special guests, here's your host, Brett Mason.
Well, here we go. It's Thursday, and it is time to talk politics as we do every week about this time. Good morning if you're catching this podcast as it's released. Good afternoon, evening, middle of the night if you're listening to it later. That's the beautiful thing about podcasts. You can listen to them anytime you want, 24/7, 7 days a week. So, as the intro mentions, I don't like anything really. I don't like Democrats. Don't like Republicans. I'm not a capital L official libertarian, but I'm libertarian leaning. Mainly, I'm on the side of liberty and freedom. Generally, I just don't like the government. That doesn't mean that there aren't some good people in government. At the very least, I know there's some people in government that started out with good intentions. I think most of them, if they've been there very long, have wound up in a far different place because that's just the nature of man. And I think that's probably the biggest problem with government is people don't understand that man has a nature and that it's very difficult to buck that nature. And so the propensity towards power, influence, wealth, control, all those things we're naturally inclined to do, and they're not bad things necessarily. Back when the world was a much tougher place to live in, and you had to exert your dominance over your area for your tribe, or you had to defend your food source because food's scarce in a lot of places in the world. For all these reasons, control, dominance, power, eventually leading to wealth, were all important. In today's world, pretty much the only thing, I guess, about this control, this dominance, this power is just to breed more power and exert your lives over the lives of others. That's what government does. And since government is comprised of humans, and that is human nature, pretty much everybody that winds up there, that is their goal in life. If it isn't, it is after they've been there a while, once you get a taste of it. So that's my basic philosophy on government. It's our founders' philosophy on government. That's why they made it so difficult for the government to run amok. Of course, you can have 1,000 constitutions. You can have 1 billion declarations of independence. You can have them written in stone. You can have them signed in blood. But if the A, knowledge of the people, and B, passion of the people isn't there to enforce the documents are meaningless. And that's where we've arrived today, sadly, as a country. Most of the country is completely ignorant of the concepts of liberty and freedom. They don't have a clue what the Constitution's about. They have no idea why our founders founded the country. They have no idea why so many people died. They don't have any idea about that. They just know they want a smartphone and a new car and can I get a tablet and a laptop and, people need stuff. Let's give it to them. Why not? So what if it means that I don't do this or I can't do that or I lose a little bit of this liberty or I lose a little bit of I mean, they don't care. They don't understand it. So A, you don't have the knowledge, and then B, either there's no passion or the passion is misguided. There are a select few, though. So I guess that probably means there's hope. Today we're going to step way off in the deep end, talking about two things you should never talk about, and that would be politics and religion. We're going to squeeze all that into one episode. Send your hate mail to... For real, though, you probably found this post posted on Facebook, so go back and comment under it. Join a conversation. I don't mind debating. And if you are really passionate about politics and you haven't decided to defend or promote or discuss and you'd like to be on the show, I'm completely open to that, too. Absolutely. All you got to do is send me a message on Facebook. We can get it done. So the FFRF filed a lawsuit back in 2012. They had numerous examples of churches promoting political candidates, promoting political views. Churches are tax-exempt organizations, and as such, they have, only certain things that they can or cannot do. Now, I was debating this with somebody the other day. My take on it is if promoting a candidate, most churches, I guess, nowadays promote Republicans, which is interesting because back in the 50s and 60s, the churches were promoting Democrats. So it comes and goes in cycles. But anyway, most of your churches are conservative, quote unquote conservative, which means not conservative the way I am, but conservative as in we want to run everybody's life and tell them what they can do with their bodies and what they can do with their money and what they can do inside their homes. So they try to elect candidates that also feel that strongly about it. They quote scriptures and try to use scripture to affect political, agendas and legislation. And I don't agree with any of that, by the way, and it really annoys me, but that's neither here nor there. So you can't do that. You can't be a tax-exempt organization and do that. You just can't do it. If Jesus taught anything, you follow the law of the land. You respect the law of the land. There's several places where that's mentioned, and it's mentioned in other places in the Bible. So, first of all, if you're going to teach a particular religion, and one of those the facets of that religion is that you obey the laws of the land, well, then you're breaking your own religion. So you just can't do it. So if you want to promote a candidate, give up your exempt status. It's just that simple. That's all you have to do. I don't imagine you'll see any church doing that, but I'm just saying that's the solution to the problem. Don't come complaining about it. Now, there are a limited number of organizations like this, 501c3s, who can do things like promote voter registration, encourage voter participation, provide voter education. But it has to be completely nonpartisan. They can't endorse a party. They can't endorse a candidate. It just has to be based around simply the process of voting. And that's it. How to vote, where to vote, how to register people to vote, and that's pretty much it. So, the churches, a lot of churches especially over the past decade, have evolved into just very heavily political organizations. You'll have preachers behind the pulpit endorsing a particular candidate based on certain laws, and you'll even see churches have a candidate come and speak from behind the pulpit. Well, you can't do that. I'm sorry, you just can't do it. It's breaking the law. So, if you believe the very book that you're going to teach from, that's in the book, you need to follow it. Not only is it the law, it's also your religion. So you're breaking your religion and you're breaking your law, which kind of makes you hypocritical. Don't get me started. So anyways, my point is that you wouldn't like it any more if an organization you didn't agree with got complete tax exempt status and they got to promote somebody that didn't agree with what you agree with. You would be to the roof. You would be raising. Just your hair would be on end. You would be screaming and yelling, and you would be throwing a tantrum. And the thing is, rightfully so. You'd be completely in the right. And so that's what these organizations need to understand. It's pretty simple. It's not all that complicated. So here's a brief summary from the ruling from the lawsuit. Political campaign intervention includes any and all activities that favor or oppose one or more candidates for public office. The prohibition extends beyond candidate endorsement, however. Contributions to political campaign funds or public statements of position, either verbal or written, made by or on behalf of an organization in favor of or in opposition to any candidate for public office clearly violate the prohibition on political campaign intervention. Distributing statements prepared by others that favor or oppose any candidate for public office will also violate the prohibition. Allowing a candidate to use an organization's assets or facilities also violates the prohibition if other candidates are not given an equivalent opportunity. So there's a little notch. You can have, let's say you're a church that beats the pro-life drum or the there's no same-sex marriage drum, whatever drum it is your church is beating. You can have your guy in there, but you got to extend and give them a reasonable amount of time and opportunity to prepare to come. The same invitation and host people with opposing points of view. I don't see that happening. So, I was talking to that's the reason this is the podcast today, because I was talking to somebody about it the other day, and it turned into I don't like it to be a religious discussion. It's a legal discussion to me, and so we can avoid the religious aspect of it altogether. Because if you think you'll step on people's toes with politics, you'll really step on somebody's toes with religion, because people believe what they believe. And that's one of the interesting things about religion is, it hasn't been that many decades ago, 5 or 6 decades ago, where everybody didn't collectively just call themselves Christians and automatically assume they were lumped in the same category. That's evolved over time. You had Protestants, you had Catholics, you had the Baptists, the Methodists, the Lutherans. So that's what everybody's like, I'm a Baptist, because Baptists believe a certain way, so I'm a Baptist. But that's now become a melting pot of Christians. But within that, there's all these different beliefs. So I often try to tell people when I'm talking to them about it, and they yell at me, and because I've been yelled at and screamed at by some very pious individuals about how the God or the Bible or religion needs to be in the politics, in the Congress, in the House of Representatives, in the White House. We need that there. And I can argue very confidently that you're wrong. First of all, when religion creeps into government, you get what happens in the Middle East. Now, you can well, that's because they're Muslims. I don't know if you've read the verses from their Bible that they used to do all those atrocities, but there are the same verses in the Bible. Now, you don't go by them, but they're in there. They're in the Old Testament. Well, you're like, oh, yeah, but... Well, they're still in the Bible. So all you need is a group of people to go, oh, we're going with the stoning of the people. We're going to stone them, because it says in the Bible. And then all you need is a few people to agree with them, and bam, suddenly it enters into... And you don't like it. Then you're like, well, God, I don't believe in stoning people. Well, you only need a few wackos to interpret that that's what it should be, because the verses are in the Bible, to incorporate that into politics, and bam, suddenly your government is stoning people. There's probably somebody listening to the podcast right now that's like, yes, we need to be stoning people. Well, you're an idiot. So that's the danger. It becomes dangerous because, let's say you're... I have to take it to the extremes to get some people to understand it. And they're like, well, that's extreme. Well, that's the problem, is because it can become extreme. That's why you prevent it. It starts out innocuous, and then over time, it evolves into something extreme. Our government is a perfect example. When our government was first founded by our founding fathers and put into place, and the Constitution was written, it was the most small, contrite, impotent government that ever had no power, had very little power. They could lay a few tariffs. They could run a post office. They could run a military. They could build some roads, and that was about it. That's all they could do. Now look at the government. It runs every freaking inch of your life. You can't even breathe without the government regulating it or being involved in it. It's become extreme. But it happens a little over time, see? If you were living in our founding fathers' day, and you lived in that environment, and then suddenly you were plopped down in today's environment, you would be like, what the Jesus Christ, what's going on here? But none of us are doing that. Well, some of us are, but most people aren't, because it happened over time. It evolved and evolved and evolved, and they laid a little bit more on, a little more, and progressively. Well, the same thing would happen with religion. And so let's say over time, you're all pro, let's get religion inside the government. And so over the course of time, people who, what are some of the things that, some churches disagree on is baptism mandatory, or some churches disagree on whether speaking in tongues is, let's use speaking in tongues. So some denominations don't believe that you have to speak in tongues, but it's okay. Then there's some others that's like, well, you don't even supposed to speak in tongues. And there's others like, oh, you got to speak in tongues or you're going to die in a fiery, hellish grave. So let's imagine that you're going to die in the fiery, hellish grave speaking in tongue sects. Over through the course of time, more and more of those get through office, and a little chunk of this is... Next thing you know, 75 years later, enough of them have been through and been a part of and are there now to where it's actually worked into law that you're not a church. If you don't make it mandatory for members of your church to speak in tongues, then you're not even a church. You can't even be a church because that's in the Bible. And so suddenly your church that doesn't believe in the speaking in tongues, you're not even a church anymore. Your tax exempt status is taken away. Not only that, they pass laws to arrest you because you're impersonating a church. You're impersonating a pastor. You're impersonating a religious leader, teaching falsehoods. You must be imprisoned. Well, now we're back into the days of the New Testament where they were tossing Paul and Peter in jail for preaching stuff that was wrong. Suddenly it's come about. Why? Because the power of the government. Why did all that happen? In Peter and Paul's day, how was that able to happen? It wasn't because the people in the church down the street were doing it. It was because the government was doing it. There was laws in the books. That's how they were able to do it. That's what they got. You had the Jewish law and you had the Romans in charge, but the Jewish had the law, and the law is what got Jesus. This is why he was hung. Now, granted, if you're a Christian, Jesus had to be crucified. It had to happen. So whatever, something was being accomplished. My point is, you don't put it in there. You just don't do it. You make it a level playing field. You don't get involved in the religion, and you let people choose their own religion. You let people live in their own way. The government doesn't have anything to do with it. And don't even get me started on the marriage thing. Marriage is not a government thing. It never was a government thing. It's always been a religious thing. The government shouldn't even be involved in it. So now that the government has become involved in it, and same-sex couples who want to get married for legitimate reasons, they love each other and they want to get married because if one of them has kids, they love their partner, they believe that their partner is the best person to raise their kid if they die. When they die, they want to know that their partner will be that kid's parent. The same way it would be with the... Now, it doesn't matter if you agree with it or not. It's not any of your business. Just like it's none of their business how you decide to raise your kids. It's none of their business who you decide to leave your kids with when you die. It's none of their business. Likewise, it's none of your business. But they can't get the traditional marriage contract that all these rights are accompanied to. They can't get it. So that's a government thing. It's government control. So you don't have to believe that you don't even have to believe in gay people. You don't have to believe that. You don't have to believe that gay people should get married. You don't have to believe any of that to believe and support people's rights to do what they want. Your rights are awesome. I mean, one of my favorite libertarian things is your rights are perfectly fine right up till the tip of my nose, and that's where they stop. Your rights stop at the tip of my nose. And when it gets to the tip of my nose, now it's my rights. And that's our government is founded on the supreme rights of the individual. It's not founded on the rights of a religious group. It's not founded on the rights of a particular marriage group. It's not founded on the rights of white people or black people or green people or orange people or short people or tall people or fat people. It's founded on the rights and supremeness of one person, me. Now, when you say it, that one person is you. So I have every God-given right afforded to me under the sun. I can do anything I want. There is no limitation on what I can do. It's without limitation. My rights are limitless. The only time my rights become infringed is when they bump up against you. When my rights get to the tip of your nose and then push past that point and infringe on you, they're no longer my rights anymore. My supremeness has now infringed on your supremeness. And that's the only limitation on rights. That's the way our founders understood it. That's the way our founders spoke about it. And it's the way anybody with any reasonable amount of sense about liberty understands it. So it doesn't matter what I like. You know, I don't think you should be able to dress like a hoochie mama. I don't think you should show your crack. You know? I don't think you should walk around with your crack hanging out. But it's your right to do that. If I'm sitting out I know you're going to say, well, the law doesn't say it. Well, the law is wrong. But if I'm sitting out on my front porch and my neighbor who paid for and owns their house, they have the deed to it, it's their property. If they want to cut their grass in some outfit that shows they're cracked, that's them and their business. I have the option to look away. Whatever happened to looking away? You don't like something, look away. Oh, but my kids will see it. Well, don't let your kids go out there. Pretty sure people don't cut the grass 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So just wait till it passes. Wait till Crack Boy puts the lawnmower away. Then, look, it intrudes on you. It's a pain, I know, but they didn't do anything to you. Well, now Brett Mason is advocating that people cut the lawn in the crack. No, I'm not advocating that. I'm just saying if they did it, if my neighbors started doing it tomorrow, well, I would just think it's funny. But, we're all different. First, I don't have any kids here, so if I had kids, depending on their age, I most likely would not want them to see that. And I would be like, look, the neighbor's being stupid. You can't go out there and look at that. If there was a place in the backyard where they didn't have an angle, I'd let them go watch it there. Otherwise, I'd have them sit in here and play some kind of video game, or we'd play a board game, or I'd get them involved in something and we'd wait till the crackiness went away. And at some point in time, I may go over and have a discussion with my neighbor and go, man, neighbor, I got 7-year-old Johnny and 6-year-old Susie. And, God, it's just, it's a bit much for them to see you walking around with your crack hanging out while you're cutting the grass. And I fully respect your right to do it. I'm not asking that. I'm just asking you as a friendly neighbor, somebody who's got your back while you're out of town and watch over your property. And we got each other's back in the neighborhood. Just as a favor, could you please just not do that? It would be awesome to me. I'm asking you, and with the extreme understanding that it's your right to do whatever you want because it's your property and you are king and lord of your property. Anything past that, well, it's their right. Well, I know a lot of people aren't agreeing with me, but I'll go back to what Jesus said. And Jesus talked about this, and this, I don't want this to be much of a religious thing. Again, I'd like to stay on the constitutional side of it, the freedom, liberty side of it. And I'm only throwing in just a tad bit of the religious side because I'm not a preacher and I'm not an advocate of the Bible or laws and rules and the way you should live. That's you determine that for you. So I don't want to get into that. But the one or two things I will say about it, there's a few examples in there. Of course, there's the infamous verse of you given to Caesar what's Caesar's, right? So you're under subjection to the law. And once the law is in place, you're subject to it, which, again, I'll go back to, makes it really bad if if you put the religion in the government and suddenly the government passes a law to qualify you as a Christian or to qualify your church as an official church, you have to do something your church disagrees with. Well, according to the Bible, well, you'd be at real odds at that point because the Bible says you have to be subject to the government and the laws of the land, but you also are subject to God. Well, you'd be in quite a conundrum then. I guess your choice, of course, is you got to go with God as being the ultimate, but then that puts you at extreme odds with the government, and then bad stuff is just going to happen. Well, it could have all been avoided if we just keep this whole separation thing there. It shouldn't be there. The government should be completely neutral on religion and have nothing to do with any of it. Again, you're like, well, what about Satanists? What about Satanists that believes in sacrificing kids? Well, sacrificing kids is illegal. You can't kill people. You can't murder people. So that's not a religious argument. That's an argument of somebody breaking a law that makes sense. Thou shalt not kill and all. See? It goes back again as to where are your rights. You have the rights to be a Satanist right up to the point that to the tip of my nose where you cross over and infringing my rights. Well, if I'm a 6-year-old virgin kid and you come as a Satanist and you're going to sacrifice me, well, you have just crossed over into infringing my rights. Your rights for freedom of religion have now crossed over and infringed my rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, to not be murdered. So it's not a religion thing. It's just a rights thing. That all we need is rights. You have rights. You have rights endowed by your Creator. They're full and all-encompassing. And the only time there's ever a legal issue is when somebody infringes upon them. Otherwise, there's no issue. Should never be an issue. And now you can see why I'm not a Republican. Because a Republican loves infringing on people's rights. telling people what they can do with their money, what they can do with their bodies, what they can do inside their own homes. I ain't about all of that. That ain't none of your business. So there was this particular place in the Bible where they'd set them down. There was like 5,000 or something, and Jesus broke the bread and gave thanks, and they fed all of them, right? And then after it was over, they gathered and filled 12 baskets with fragments left over after it was all over. Well, after all these things had happened, it had become so overwhelming. The people started rising up and saying, this is the prophet who was to come. And Jesus perceived, the Bible says, Jesus perceived that they were about to make him king. Now, your politician that quotes Bible scriptures and talks about how he represents your values, I understand your values and I'll vote your values. No, you won't. Your values, you don't know anything about me. You don't know what my values are. I can pretty much promise you they're not the same, though. I never vote for somebody who has that crap in their advertisements. If you want the Brett Mason vote, leave that crap out of your advertisements. Your values are my values. You're a lying piece of crap. First of all, you don't know what my values are. Second of all, even if you did know them, I'm quite sure you don't agree on all of them. So you're just full of crap. What I want you to say is, you're endowed by your Creator with inalienable rights. The only times that those rights should be even talked about is when they start to infringe on somebody else's right, because we have complete liberty in this country. We really are the land of the free and home of the brave, and I fight for liberty and freedom above all. That's what I want to hear you say, because that's the only damn thing you're supposed to be doing up there. But no, you understand my values. So Jesus, this is in John, by the way, John 6, I think, if you want to go read it. So Jesus, who sensed that they were about to seize him and make him king, that's how bad they wanted him to be king. They weren't going to ask him, hey, Jesus, would you like to be the king? They were going to seize him and make him the king. Now, if your boy that's running for whatever office he's running for perceived that the people were about to seize him and fling him into that office to have control as a part of the government apparatus, what do you think his answer would be? Would he withdraw to a mountain all alone like Jesus did? Or would he jump up and down and do the happy, I'm in government and I can control people's lives and now dance? There's no place for religion in politics. They don't read all the scriptures where it talks about the God of this world and God's kingdom. So you have the God of this world. You'll read it in there several places. The God of this world. Read who that is. This world has an order, has a pecking order, has the way things go. Do you want to be a part of the ruling class of this world? Jesus never taught that. Jesus taught about being a part of the kingdom. That's the part that you're supposed to stretch. So I think there's a great. It's just my personal opinion. If you disagree with me, feel free to comment on the post where you found this on Facebook. But I think it's pretty evident that people aren't supposed to be involved in politics at all from a religious standpoint. And if you are a really religious person, and your goal is to make an impact or do that, well, do it in the ways that Jesus taught. Feed the sick. Clothe the naked. Feed the hungry, I should have said. Clothe the naked. Provide shelter for the homeless. Provide help for the widows. Just spend your time doing that. And no, going to the government and taxing me more, taking a bunch of that out for operating expenses so that only about 30% of every dollar you steal from me is handed back to the people without clothes or the people without homes and the people that are sick. No, that's not doing the Lord's work. That's highway robbery. That's you taking a nice fat paycheck for yourself, making sure your cronies up there also get a chunk of that for their big fat paychecks so you can sit around and make more laws. No, leave me my dollar and I will give 100% of it to the people who are homeless, to the people who have no clothes, and to the people who are hungry. Of course, that's very incumbent upon the people doing that. Well, that falls about you being right with the Lord and doing what the Bible says, and that's something I'm not going to get into today because, again, I intended this to be a political discussion, not a religious one. I had to walk a very fine line in the process. I feel that I've probably exacerbated about every aspect of this that I can, and so probably I should stop. If you enjoyed Political Talk Thursday, comment on the Facebook post or like it or share it and let other people know about it. And if you disagreed, light me up on there. I can take it. I'm a full-grown man. You won't be the first one, and I promise you won't be the last one. I respect you. It's your freedom and your liberties that allow you to say anything in the world that you want.
Thanks for listening to Political Talk Thursday. Make sure you look for tomorrow's podcast, Football Fridays. It's a panel of Auburn and Alabama fans talking smack in SEC football.